Alright, so we're going to have a good discussion with this one. So we're going to talk about good old Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. Now, if you go back into the archives of this channel, obviously the first video you'll find is a review of the 58 Dracula. And obviously that was done at a very, very special time because obviously I got the inspiration to do a YouTube channel and start making videos. And obviously, the time I did the Dracula review, it was at a wonderful time where we finally we finally got a beautiful, beautiful release of the 58 film. It was a 3 disc set, so you got a Blu-ray and DVD set. And what you got here was a polished up version of the original UK theatrical, and you also got an expanded version of the film that included a couple of extra little bits and pieces that were included in the Japanese cut of the film, of all things, and had been basically as remastered as well as they could be and reinserted into the film. Obviously, most notably is an expanded or extended disintegration scene at the end when Christopher Lee gets caught in the sunlight. It's fascinating, and it obviously note as well we get the actual Dracula title, obviously, because for so long we could only get it with the horror of Dracula, basically the US title. Of course, I was lucky enough to get my hands on the original UK DVD release before that went out of print, but that was still under the Horror of Dracula title. And but to finally get a restored version of the original English print, and you get that wonderful ornate title card, which of course is just Dracula, no horror of. Yeah, so that got this channel started, and it's again, the 58 Dracula is such a wonderful film, and it's an absolute masterclass in doing so much with so little, because obviously he only had about an £80,000 budget to work with, and obviously the scale of the Dracula book, obviously one of the heavily condense it into like 1 hour 20 minutes. It's masterfully done, and obviously, but some of the quick thinking that they had to you know utilize, like, we don't have the budget for a huge seafaring journey, transporting Dracula to England, so that's gone. Instead, we'll load the coffin onto the back of a carriage and send him off to Germany. Done. But the movie doesn't suffer for it because it's so good, and obviously a lot of that, you've got the tremendous master artistry from the master, Terence Fisher, who obviously directed the thing, and then you have obviously the wonderful Peter Cushing as Van Helsing, and then obviously Christopher Lee as Dracula. And obviously something I touch on in my review is this is a Dracula that we've never seen before. Obviously, we had the daunting prospect of taking this film over to America and premiering it over there. Obviously, Dracula had become something he'd been spoofed and become something of a laughing stock. When the minute you have Dracula with Abbott and Costello, the illusion's gone. And obviously, you couldn't blame Bela Lugosi for that, because obviously he was, towards the end of his life, he was in great financial difficulty. So he had to do what he could, and if that means just, appearing as Dracula in comedic contexts, you can't hold that against him. But Hammer was faced with this feverish task of taking this film over to the Americans. And obviously, opening night, the Americans filtered into the theatre. They expected a laugh riot, basically. They were in there, they were rowdy, there were probably 3 sheets. But something that they touch on, and I can never remember whether it's in, they did a book that's about Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee's films. It might be touched on in that, or one of the number of interviews that Christopher Lee did about how the Americans, weren't prepared for what they were presented with, because the minute Christopher Lee appears and you see that 7 foot tall silhouette at the top of the stairs, silence in the theatre. no one was laughing. No one was laughing at all the minute Christopher Lee appears on screen, and we're off to the races. And then obviously, because for the first 20 minutes, obviously you've got that Christopher Lee in there, and then you've got Jonathan Harker carrying the whole thing, and then obviously he bites it, or is bitten, as the case may be, and then Peter Cushing arrives, and obviously he just carries the whole thing on his back for the rest of the film. And obviously, the film holds up in a lot of respects because it's very well done, but there are parts of the film that that come across as very much of the time. You've got certain performances that are very of the time, the very 50s. Obviously, Jonathan Van, is it Essen or Ensign, who plays Harker? Obviously, he's a very 50s style performer. Valerie Gaunt, again a very 50s style, and then obviously Michael Gough and Melissa Stribling. But Peter, whose performance in the 58 movie is just timeless. It's just absolutely timeless. And there's so many little nuances and subtleties that he does. Again, I always point to the scene when he comes in to examine Lucy, after he hears that she's been feeling unwell since the time that Dracula vanished, and he goes into the room and obviously, talking to her, and it's just casually, he's checking her over, looks one side of the neck, turns the head, looks at the other side of the neck, and he clocks the bite marks, and it's just the subtle little change in his demeanour, but he doesn't break face. It's just, but again, wonderful, wonderful performance by Peter in this movie. But obviously, what got this whole thing started, this discussion, my friend Simon very kindly sent me that photo that Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee took shortly before Peter's death. And it's a wonderful photo, but it just got me thinking about him. And I actually just got done watching Satanic Rites of Dracula because I was in Edinburgh recently, went to the HMV there, and obviously, as part of their premium collection, they've finally done a release of Satanic Rites of Dracula. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Again, wonderful cover art. It's a bare bones thing in terms of the features. A few art cards that you get included with the set, which is nice. And also, what I will say is this is the best presentation this film's ever got. Because obviously this is another thing that the movie bombed when it was released in '73, Satanic Rites, and I think it became something of, it basically slipped through the cracks in terms of the rights of the whole thing.